It was my honeymoon trip, but my husband's best friend insisted on going into the sea for shark watching despite being on her period. I reasoned against it. The sharks would go amok from the scent of blood, only for Heidi to snap at me. You're just jealous I have a nice body. That's why you don't want me to have fun with your husband. My own husband and his other buddies joined in too, brushing me off impatiently. It's rare for us to hang out. Don't be a buzzkill. That's right. Hannah is young and beautiful. She should take pictures with the sharks. With that, they all went down the water despite my earnest protests, and her menstrual bleeding drew schools of sharks toward her right away. When I tried to help, she kicked me in the head, knocking me out and leaving me in the water as the sharks tore me to pieces. While I died under the sea in agonizing despair, Heidi, my husband, and their friends managed to get to safety. Once they returned to civilization, they reported my death as a drowning and pilfered all my wealth. While they rose to the peak of their existence, my parents, devastated by my death, both took their own lives. That was when I opened my eyes again and found myself back on the desert island where they were going to shark watching. I shouldn't go shark diving while on my period? Don't be ridiculous. Great white sharks diet. You're just jealous and get this, not even the gods can stop me from going in the water. Sand's blasphemous rant. She was one of Larry Shaw's so-called bros. The same Larry who married into my family. The day after the wedding, we were going on our honeymoon when Heidi urging Larry to go shark diving with them near a desert island. I tried to stop them to no avail, and was dragged along to a deserted island. And before going into the water, Heidi changed tampons in front of everyone. Blood is known to send sharks into a frenzy, and I tried to tell her to stay on the boat. Instead of listening, Heidi called me out for being paranoid in front of everyone. And everyone promptly agreed, saying that I was making a fuss out of nothing and making Heidi look bad. I expected Larry to stop her, only for him to snort at me. You're just trying to make yourself look better. Are you done? How could you be so jealous? I ruined this for her. I could only watch as Heidi entered the water with my husband without any protective gear. To no surprise, the shiver of sharks erupted in a frenzy from the blood and attacked Heidi. Out of kindness, I tried to save her, only for her to kick me in the head, knocking me out and throwing me to the frenzied sharks. While Larry and their friends managed to get to Heidi to safety, I was left at the bottom of the ocean. Afterwards, they all testified to the police that I had ignored warnings against not going shark diving while on my period and ended up eaten. Larry hence inherited all my wealth and married Heidi just 3 months later, rising to the peak of their existence. As for my parents, they were left devastated by my death, and both of them took their own lives. Stop trying to harass Heidi. We're all here to play with the sharks, and going shark diving on your period is perfectly fine. Larry's outburst brought me to my senses. I had been reincarnated, even as It's her freedom. She can die all she wants. I was just trying to be polite. Since fate had seen it fit to give me a second chance, I wasn't about to bother meddling. They wanted to die with Heidi? That suited me just fine. Meanwhile, our yacht had arrived in shark territory, while Larry's friends were still dissing me. What's worse than ignorance? Running your mouth while being ignorant. Don't go swimming while on your period. You only said that because Heidi is on her period. You just want to screw with her. Exactly. What did Larry even see in you? You're so petty with another woman. Heidi let them continue, watching me gleefully. Having had enough, I took a deep breath and said, "You're right. Since I'm such a buzzkill, I won't be joining you. I'm leaving." Larry frowned and snapped at me right then. "Are you done? Everyone's traveled all the way here to see the sharks, but you have to make this about yourself. I never wanted to come." I shot back. "You dragged me here. Heidi was the one who wanted to see the sharks."
来吧，机枪兵，落地了，宝贝儿。
Go swim with the sharks all you want. I won't stop you. Just give me the speedboat, and I'll go back to the shore. The speedboat had an automated navigation system, and we were just a few dozen miles away from the mainland.
OK， 任务做完，走，干他们去。
After all, I wasn't interested in stopping them from feeding the sharks.
过去的，死就死了呗。在这会儿你们还怂吗？不怂了，走吧。
This is our first trip as husband and wife.
怂啥呀？
I can't let you go off alone. I'm worried.
这个时候就是
my arm and pouted. Come on, Zoe. We're already here, and you can't just throw petty tantrums because you don't like me. I mean, leaving by yourself.
OK.
Everyone's going to be worried. And with those words, everyone was promptly glaring at me in disdain.
等会儿，我先飞一下，我知道，我先飞一下，别急。
See the sharks. Forget not
我知道，我看看。
You have to keep being.
还敢进一步呢？你还他妈搁这进一步呢？6套，跟他，跟他，跟他。就这一个，今天这个。
Time marrying you. What a stubborn, ignorant woman. And after a while, Heidi sighed out loud. Anyway, you're not taking the speedboat. It's for emergencies, and the sea is very dangerous. If someone needs help, we'll be in trouble without the speedboat. Then picking up a lifebuoy and throwing it at me, she continued, "But if you really want to leave, use that. The seas are calm right now, and you'll make it back soon. You just want me to die, don't you?" I could laugh right then. We were miles away from land, and with all the undercurrents, I just floated into the ocean on a lifebuoy. Heidi,
最后一个别急，在乌鲁鲁。
how could you say something like that? I'm worried about everyone's safety.
别急别急，
Risk everyone's lives for you.
烧着了。
How could you be
哎
so
呀，我操！
She was
妈了呀，
ridiculous.
我这个
If there was a problem,
那没打
they
死
would
他
rather
吗
use the？ speedboat
服了
than the，huge yacht.
6套这
It
么
was
硬的吗？
obvious that she just wanted to direct the lynch mob at me. And as I expected, everyone promptly leaped to her defense and yelled at me.
打多少枪
You're so
啊？
selfish. You want to take the speedboat? Hell, no.
1、2，
Why
哎
should
呀，我
everyone
操！
pay for your childishness?
我打的3
I ignored their hollering, however,
哎呀，最
and
后
pushed
最后
Heidi away
没打
before
到
going
他
for
了，
the
好烦。
speedboat. However, Larry promptly caught me and slapped me across the face. There's no end with you. Then, reaching for a wrench, he struck the propeller repeatedly. Clang. In just a few hits, the propellers were left in pieces, disabling the speedboat and leaving me with nowhere to go. Let's see what you can do now. Larry then gloated.
哎
The other sneered
呀，
at me
妈的，没
gleefully,
打过
blood
呀
seeping！ out of my mouth while my cheeks swelled from the slap. Heidi even sighed as if she cared. I'm doing this so that your honeymoon will be filled with happy memories. Quit being so stubborn and come with us.
拜拜。
I promise you'll never forget
这
this.
没打过，过
Seeing
分
the
了。
glee in her eyes, I realized that she wanted to ruin my honeymoon trip from the start. Still, I nodded, to pretend to give in. All right, let's go. They wouldn't let me leave?
是的，
Fine, I would stay and watch them swim to their own demise. Seeing that I caved,
that boss.
Larry calmed and urged everyone to prepare their scuba gear. Heidi made sure to wear a skimpy bikini that showed off her figure, even puffing her chest or rearing her posterior while warming up. All the men were all staring fixedly at her and watched as she jumped into the water without any gear, just like she did in my last life. Then she waved at them excitedly. Come on. The water's warm, and I don't even feel my period cramps. The sharks are right there, too. Hearing her, everyone else dived in and happily swam toward the deeper end. I was about to put on my gear when Larry pushed me into the sea. Why are you dragging your feet? Everyone's in the water already. Don't make them wait. He jumped in too, pulling me by my wrist toward deeper waters. Seeing us, Heidi shoved me aside as if a prank, pulling Larry further ahead, and suddenly stopped and turned, handing me her phone, clearly asking for pictures. When I took it, she wrapped her arms around Larry's neck and pressed her chest tightly against him flirtatiously. Larry found nothing wrong with that, even holding her waist in turn, and beckoned for me to take a picture of the beautiful moment. The rest of their friends were all laughing and holding 2 thumbs up. I felt my stomach churning as those two frolicked like there was no one around. I must have been blind to marry a jerk like Larry. Seething with hatred, I allowed the phone to slip through my fingers and fall into the sea with a plop. Larry wheeled on me right then, glaring at me furiously, and started to swim toward me for another scolding. That was when a violent splashing echoed from the distance. Soon, a shiver of great white sharks appeared. Each shark was massive, but they rarely attacked unprovoked. Just seeing them left me shuddering uncontrollably, but Heidi's eyes lit up and dragged Larry along to the sharks, while beckoning for everyone to follow. When they had gone far enough, she turned to smirk at me. Then, taking off Larry's scuba mask, she wrapped herself around Larry like a koala to a tree and jammed her lips on his. Larry was stunned for a moment, but he soon got into it and kissed her back. Seeing that, their buddies quickly made a circle around them, taking photos with their phones repeatedly. I watched from the distance, unaffected as Larry and Heidi kept swapping spit, my eyes fixed on Heidi's groin. None of them noticed the crimson slowly seeping out of Heidi's bikini, spreading into the water toward the sharks. Heidi and Larry remained glued to each other. But the more they kissed, the more Heidi bled from her groin. The sharks that had been peacefully circling the distance suddenly seemed to accelerate, their aggression obvious. However, none of the others noticed, and they kept taking photos and cheering excitedly like children. Remembering the pain and despair as the sharks ripped me into shreds in my last life, I decided to be kind one last time and swam toward them, gesturing repeatedly at the shiver of sharks that were starting to get into a frenzy. Some of them were even breaking off, swimming towards us. However, Heidi thought nothing of it, even splashing the water as she swam closer to the sharks to provoke them, and waved at everyone to follow. She even took selfies with Larry, spreading their arms and smiling as if to give the all green. I watched as the sharks approached, knowing that it'd be too late before long. I tried to warn them again, but Larry scowled as he thought I was being a buzzkill again and swam straight toward me, pushing me off. Losing balance, I gulped mouthfuls of water that left my chest burning, while he pointed repeatedly at the yacht, clearly telling me to leave and stop being a buzzkill. Seeing the disgust he had in his eyes, my last ounce of charity faded. In that case, they could all die. I even made a sad face, pretending that I was reluctant to return to the yacht. Naturally, no one else cared that I was being chased off, since they'd be happier without a buzzkill like me anyway. They excitedly took photos of the sharks circling them, oblivious that each of them were leering at them and completely restless. I turned to see Heidi grinning smugly after I got chased off, and pulling Larry along to the center of the shiver. With her leading them, everyone excitedly followed. The sharks too started to swim toward Heidi as well, finally finding the source of the blood, their movements quickening as they started circling the group. And now, all they had to do was wait for the first strike. Heidi, however, naively thought that they were friendly, even reaching out for the tail of the nearest shark. But in an instant, the largest great white shark shot forward, its razor-sharp teeth chomping down on Heidi's hand. Everyone's faces dropped as her blood spurted, dyeing the sea red. Larry was the closest to Heidi, and he found himself freezing up as he was staring inside another great white shark's gaping jaw. Sent into a frenzy from the scent of blood, its jaws chomped down at his head. The ocean is a silent executioner. Below the surface, screams do not echo. They are swallowed by the vast, suffocating blue. From the deck of the yacht, I stood dripping wet, gripping the steel railing. I had scrambled up the boarding ladder just seconds before the water behind me exploded into chaos. I looked down at the scene unfolding 50 yards away. The crystal-clear azure water was rapidly turning into a swirling, chaotic vortex of foam and crimson. The first strike was always the test. The largest great white, a monstrous 14-foot female, had torn through Heidi's outstretched hand like wet paper. The sheer force of the bite didn't just sever fingers. It dragged Heidi violently downward. Through the distortion of the water, I saw Heidi's face breach the surface for a fraction of a second. Her eyes, previously alight with arrogant mockery, were now blown wide with absolute, primal terror. She opened her mouth to scream, but the ocean rushed in, choking her. Help! One of Larry's friends, a muscular guy named Todd, breached the surface, frantically waving his arms. They're attacking. Help us! I stood perfectly still. The sea breeze felt cool against my damp skin. I didn't reach for the radio. I didn't reach for a lifebuoy. I simply watched. Down below, the scent of Heidi's severed hand and the menstrual blood she had so proudly ignored triggered a chain reaction. The sharks abandoned their cautious circling. It was no longer a curiosity. It was a feeding frenzy. Larry, who had been kissing her just moments before, was paralyzed. The water around him was suddenly thick with blood. He thrashed wildly, trying to swim away, but in his panic he kicked Heidi, the exact same way she had kicked me in my past life. Heidi, desperate and bleeding out, lunged for him. She wrapped her remaining arm around his neck, not in a lover's embrace, but with the suffocating grip of a drowning victim trying to use another human being as a flotation device. Larry punched her. He actually punched the woman he had just been cheating on me with, right in the face, trying to break her hold. True love, I thought, a cold, humorless smile touching my lips. Another shark, smaller but faster, darted from the peripheral blue. It bypassed Larry entirely, drawn to the epicenter of the blood trail. Its jaws clamped onto Heidi's thigh. The violent thrashing of the shark's head created a vortex that pulled both Heidi and Larry under. The surface of the water boiled. Todd and the remaining two friends, Mark and Sarah, were screaming now, abandoning all pretense of friendship. They were swimming toward the yacht with a frantic, uncoordinated desperation that only made them look more like struggling prey. Zoe, throw the ring. Throw the fucking ring. Mark shrieked, his voice cracking as he swallowed a mouthful of seawater. I looked down at the lifebuoys stacked neatly beside my feet. Then slowly, deliberately, I picked one up. I held it over the edge of the yacht, making sure Mark made eye contact with me. The sea is very dangerous, I called out, my voice carrying clearly over the sound of the splashing. I wouldn't want to risk the yacht's safety. Mark's face twisted in horror and realization. He remembered the exact words Heidi had used against me earlier, the exact words they had all cheered for. I dropped the lifebuoy, not into the water, onto the deck of the yacht. Zoe, you bitch. We're going to die. Sarah screamed, her head bobbing above the water. Before she could take another breath, a shadow passed beneath her. The water surged upward, and Sarah was pulled under so violently that she didn't even have time to scream. A massive plume of red bloomed where she had just been. Todd, the strongest swimmer, was 20 yards from the boarding ladder. He was crying, snot and salt water streaming down his face. Please, Zoe, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He reached out, his fingers inches from the lowest rung of the ladder. I stepped forward, my wet bare foot pressing firmly against the locking mechanism of the ladder. With a sharp kick, I disengaged the latch. The heavy metal ladder detached from its lower moorings and swung upward, retracting into the hull of the yacht. Todd's hand swiped through empty air. He crashed against the smooth, frictionless fiberglass hull of the boat, his fingernails scraping uselessly against the gel coat. No, put it down, he wailed, treading water frantically. I knelt down, resting my arms on the railing, looking directly into his terrified eyes. You said I was a buzzkill, Todd. You said Larry lost big time marrying me. I'm just letting him enjoy the honeymoon he wanted. A fin sliced through the water directly behind Todd. He didn't even see it coming. The impact lifted him entirely out of the water by his waist. The sickening crunch of ribs snapping echoed over the waves. He was dragged down, his blood splashing against the pristine white hull of my yacht. And then there was only Larry. By some miracle of adrenaline, Larry had managed to break free from Heidi's death grip. He reached the surface, gasping for air, choking on salt water and blood. He looked around wildly. The water was a horrific crimson stew. Pieces of neoprene wetsuits, a shredded bikini top, and things I didn't care to identify bobbed on the surface. He locked eyes with me. He was perhaps 30 yards away. Zoe, he choked out, spitting blood. Zoe, help me. Start the engines. Throw a rope. Anything. I didn't move. I leaned against the railing, my expression as placid as a calm sea. Why aren't you moving? He screamed, his voice raw with hysteria. They're eating them. They ate Heidi. Start the fucking boat. I can't, Larry, I said, my voice projecting clearly. You smashed the ski boat's propeller with a wrench, remember? And I don't know how to drive the yacht. You told me women shouldn't touch the helm. Larry's face went completely pale. The reality of his own actions was finally collapsing onto him. He had systematically destroyed every avenue of escape to trap me, and in doing so, he had built his own coffin. I'll teach you, he cried, swimming toward the yacht, his strokes weak and uncoordinated from exhaustion. Just lower the ladder. Zoe, please. I'm your husband. My husband. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that cut through the ocean breeze. My husband was just swapping spit with another woman in the middle of the ocean while I watched. You aren't my husband, Larry. You're a parasite. He stopped swimming, treading water, looking up at me with absolute bewilderment. He couldn't comprehend that the submissive, quiet woman he thought he had married was watching him die with zero empathy. You're a monster, he whispered, treading water. No, Larry, I replied coldly. I'm a mirror. I'm just reflecting back exactly what you gave me. Beneath him, the water grew dark. The sharks had finished with the others. The blood in the water was a dinner bell that could be heard for miles, and more were arriving. Larry felt the shift in the current. He looked down into the murky red depths. Zoe, please, he begged, his voice dropping to a pathetic, broken whimper. I don't want to die. I know the feeling, I whispered, though he couldn't hear me. The water beneath him erupted. 3 great whites hit him simultaneously. The sheer kinetic force of the impact tossed his upper body out of the water. His spine arched at an impossible angle. The scream he let out was a sound that no human throat was designed to make. A raw, tearing shriek of absolute, unimaginable agony. He reached a hand out toward the yacht, toward me, his eyes pleading for a salvation that was never coming. And then he was pulled under. The surface boiled furiously for another 2 minutes. Then slowly, the thrashing stopped. The dorsal fins began to circle lethargically, sated for the moment. The ocean, vast and indifferent, began to dilute the massive stain of red, washing away the evidence of the slaughter. I stood on the deck for a long time, watching the water turn from crimson back to deep blue. The sun beat down on my shoulders, drying the salt water on my skin. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt completely, utterly free. I didn't immediately call for help. I needed time. I walked into the yacht's luxurious master cabin. I stripped off my wet swimsuit, took a long, hot shower, and washed the smell of the ocean and the faint metallic tang of blood off my skin. I put on a dry, comfortable sundress and poured myself a glass of expensive champagne from the mini fridge. I sat on the plush leather sofa, staring out the porthole at the empty horizon, sipping the champagne. I needed to ensure my story was flawless. In my past life, they had claimed I ignored warnings and drowned due to my own stupidity. They had played the grieving survivors perfectly. I would do the same, but better. I took Larry's phone, which he had left on the bedside table, and opened it. He hadn't bothered to change his passcode from my birthday. Idiots rarely do. I scrolled through his messages. It took me less than 2 minutes to find the group chat with Heidi and the others. The messages from the past week were a goldmine. Heidi, I can't wait to see her face when I kiss you in the water, LMAO. Larry, just don't let her see you bleeding. If she freaks out and calls the Coast Guard, it ruins the trip. Mark, who cares what the buzzkill thinks? If she complains, we just leave her on the island. I screenshotted everything and forwarded it to a secure cloud server under a fake email address. Then I deleted the evidence of the forward from his phone. I walked up to the helm. I didn't know how to pilot the yacht perfectly, but I knew enough to turn on the emergency distress beacon and key the VHF radio. I took a deep breath, pinched my arm hard enough to draw a tear, and pressed the transmission button. Mayday, mayday, mayday. I sobbed into the microphone, my voice shaking with perfectly calculated hysteria. This is the motor yacht Ocean Pearl. We have a catastrophic emergency. Shark attack. Multiple victims. Oh my God, there's so much blood. Please help me. The response from the Coast Guard was immediate. Ocean Pearl, this is Coast Guard Sector Command. We read you. What is your position? How many victims? 5, I wailed, dropping the microphone so it clattered against the console, making it sound like I was collapsing. They're all gone. My husband, he's gone. Please hurry. I gave them the GPS coordinates and cut the transmission. Then I took a heavy wrench, the same one Larry had used to destroy the speedboat propeller, and struck myself hard across the forehead. The pain was blinding, and a warm trickle of blood ran down my face, but it was necessary. I bruised my arms, tore the hem of my dress, and lay down on the deck near the retracted boarding ladder, curling into a fetal position. When the Coast Guard helicopter arrived 40 minutes later, the rescue diver found me exactly like that, bleeding, traumatized, and in a state of severe clinical shock. The aftermath was a media circus. Honeymoon massacre. 5 dead in freak shark frenzy. I played the role of the grieving widow to absolute perfection. In the hospital, I refused to eat. I stared blankly at the walls. I wept uncontrollably when the investigators interviewed me. I tried to stop them. I sobbed to the lead detective, clutching a tissue. I told Heidi she shouldn't go in the water. She was on her cycle. But they laughed at me. Larry, my husband, he hit me. I pointed to the massive bruise on my cheek, the one Larry had given me before breaking the speedboat. He forced me to stay on the boat. He said I was ruining their fun. The detective, a hardened man in his 50s, looked at me with profound sympathy. Mrs. Shaw, you have nothing to feel guilty about. You warned them. The evidence on the boat supports your story. The speedboat propeller was deliberately destroyed. I tried to lower the ladder. I lied smoothly, tears streaming down my face. But when Heidi got bitten, Larry panicked. He thrashed, and he kicked the release mechanism. The ladder retracted. I tried to pull it down, but I hit my head on the railing and passed out. When I woke up, the water was just red. It was a flawless narrative. It fit the physical evidence perfectly. The Coast Guard had found fragments of the ladder mechanism bent outward, consistent with a heavy impact from below. The investigation was closed within 2 weeks. Ruled a tragic, preventable accident caused by the victim's negligence. Larry's parents and Heidi's family tried to blame me, claiming I must have sabotaged them. But then the group chat messages Heidi had mocked me, how they planned to humiliate me, and how they intentionally ignored basic marine safety. The tide of public opinion turned instantly. I was hailed as a tragic survivor of a deeply abusive marriage. Larry and Heidi were posthumously dragged through the mud, branded as arrogant, adulterous fools who brought about their own gruesome demise. I stood in my parents' living room exactly 1 month after the incident. In my past life, this was the room where my mother had taken an overdose of sleeping pills, unable to cope with my drowning. This time, she was sitting on the sofa, holding my hand, her eyes full of fierce, protective love. "It's over, Zoe," my father said, standing by the window. "The lawyers finalized the estate transfer this morning. Larry's assets, whatever little he had before he married you, belong to you now, and the prenuptial agreement holds. Your wealth is entirely secure." "Thank you, Dad," I said quietly, taking a sip of tea. I looked out the window at the manicured lawns of our estate. I had my life back. I had my family. I had my wealth. I walked into my private study and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a small velvet box. I opened it. Inside was Larry's wedding ring. The Coast Guard had found his severed left hand floating near a kelp bed 2 days after the attack. They had returned the ring to me in an evidence bag. I took the gold band out and walked into the kitchen. I turned on the garbage disposal, letting the loud, grinding blades roar to life. I dropped the ring into the dark, churning vortex. I listened to the metallic screech as the gold was chewed up and destroyed, washed away into the sewers where it belonged. I turned off the disposal. The silence in the kitchen was beautiful. I smiled, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and started planning the rest of my life.